if you're holding expectations for somebody and they have no idea what those expectations are, then it's not going to be a emotionally close relationship. It will be a helicopter parenting kind of situation. But if it's clear what your expectations are, then it allows for those expectations to be met intentionally. Where do we start?
So the idea is community service. Well, the title, community service. So when you think about that, what do you think about normally?
When I think about community service, I think about CERT.
Volunteer work and policing.
Yeah.
I tend to think about a prison sentence, or if you do something wrong, you've got to do community service. You've got to go out and pick up trash under the bleachers.
Yeah, community service is like a punishment while you're on probation.
Yeah, probation punishment, or it's a volunteer.
Yeah, a volunteer, but it's imposed. It's an imposed volunteer service sentence.
Right. That they say, this is something that's good. If you want your business to work, you have to go out in community service. And that was my issue. And in my business building life, they say you've got to get involved in a number of community things. Actually, I was advised early to join boards of when I was still in college, maybe before you were even born. He said, go and join the boards of the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA and get on those boards so that you can serve and be known. You got to be known in the community.
Is it a networking thing?
A networking, yeah, it's networking. Community service is networking.
And then there's like the community cleanup days here in my city, where they go out once a week or once every couple of weeks and just clean up some person's messy yard.
And they go and bother the neighbors and say, your yard is too messy for us. We're going to help you clean it.
Yeah.
The person can be happy or upset.
Right.
Which, yeah, I know of one that was upset.
Yeah. They don't want you there.
Yeah. But they had a real messy place and they were going to be fined, and the city was willing to help. The volunteers were willing to help.
Yeah. Well, and I can't say they don't always not want you there. That's sometimes they're appreciative, but sometimes they just want to be left alone.
Right. I like my yard the way it is, and you're changing it all.
Yeah. So that's what I think. That's what, community service has a meaning in our culture.
In the culture. Yeah. So it needs to be changed.
Okay. What do you think?
So we change that meaning. The community, what a community is the people around you. Is that how, we could find a definition?
Yeah. Your community, like your individual community, is the people in your life, or the people around you in your immediate vicinity. You could go further out, like you have your church community within your church congregation boundaries, and then further than that, you've got your city community. And
here's the first definition of the noun: a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common.
Okay, so you could have a broader community of
Americans.
Right, but no, even broader than that. I am a bagpiper.
Yeah.
So I am in a bagpiping community that spans across the whole world.
Right. You have an affinity with people in Scotland, primarily.
Well, let's just dispel that fact. Scotland isn't the only place where bagpipes are.
But it is the quintessential bagpipe area.
Yep. Yeah, perhaps.
Everyone relates Scotland to bagpipes.
Yes.
Or bagpipes to Scotland. Most people. I guess anyone who would know, and maybe other people that know that bagpipes are made. Where are they made, by the way?
All over the world.
Everyone makes bagpipes.
We have a bagpipe maker in Bountiful.
Okay. All right. So you can make them anywhere. They're not just a Scottish tool.
Right. I think the origins of the Great Highland Bagpipe are primarily Scotland. That's where that came from, but there were other instruments that were similar in other countries. But if we're speaking the one that I play, then that's a Scottish origin. But yeah, so we're talking about community. So community is just anything that you affiliate yourself with, right?
Right. Or they can be characterized. It says particular characteristics in common. So if you can characterize almost anything. You can have a community they call a community of geese a gaggle, a community of cows a herd.
Yeah.
But those are all communities. So the first primary community is what's in your body, your community of cells, your community of, this is who you are, your person.
A community of bacteria.
Of bacteria, yeah. Beneficial bacteria. And if it's not, then you'll die anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the first place to start. The first community you serve is the one that's your body, that is you.
'Cause that's the closest one to
Whether
you.
it's physical or spiritual or emotional, it's the first community, your primary community, I guess I'd call that. So your responsibilities to that community, what are those?
Health. Yeah. I mean, maybe health is the only one. Like you can encompass physical health and mental health.
Yeah, that's right. What was it? John Deloney. He said there is no mental health and spiritual health and physical health. There's just health.
There's just health.
It's health. That's what it is. You're taking care of everything health-wise, but you're responsible 100% for the health of your own body and for the care of your own body.
Right.
No one else can be responsible for that. And I guess in the event of disability, where you can't care for yourself, others care for you.
Right. So you care for yourself as far as you're able.
So maybe there are limitations to the community you serve and how you serve it. But primarily, you've got to serve that community of self. If you don't serve it appropriately, what are the limitations?
What are your limitations if you don't serve yourself?
Right.
If you don't or if you can't, like if it's not served.
Yeah. If that community of self is not served, what happens?
You fall into a state of disrepair. Your health is bad. You can't work as properly as you would be able to otherwise.
Diminished capacity.
Diminished capacity.
Maybe at minimum diminished capacity, and maybe maximum you die. I mean, the worst thing is that your body stops functioning and you die.
Right.
So without proper care of the community, it has the ability to break down, to dysfunction, or to die. So anything that you can do to your own community inside your body can also be done to any other community you can consider.
Okay, so are you saying it's a universal principle?
Correct.
Serving yourself is the same as serving your other communities in your life.
Any other community. Yeah, I want to identify the universal thoughts in regard to community. The way society thinks about community is just way too simple, on the surface, nothing. It's nothing.
Okay.
We've got to make it something, make it valid, valuable. So valuable community, if you're serving your community, you could also break your community. You can choose to imbibe and partake of substances that kill it automatically.
Okay.
And even say that those things are good and I enjoy those. But if you're drinking a poison or a disinfectant cleaner like alcohol, that's not going to help your community.
Right, your community of self.
Right.
Will it affect your other communities that you have? Like your family, it might affect your family in some way, but how would it affect your neighborhood?
Yeah, so as you look out into the other expanses that you can go to, that's important. But I think the only point I want to try to create here is that you can effectively damage your community.
In one way or another is what you're saying.
You can make effects that damage it, that even kill it. I mean, you could, suicide is the description of damaging your personal community.
Permanently damaging.
Right. So it's possible to suicide a person. It's possible probably that same principle. So these principles that are expansive to all communities, you could do that too. You could suicide a group or a city, a Nagasaki or a Hiroshima, right?
Did you just say you could suicide it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Suicide it, you could make it die.
Yeah. If you're going to use the word suicide, we better define what that means, because I think that's a hot word for a lot of people.
Okay. Why is it hot? Why
because
is it
there's
misunderstood?
There's like trauma behind it. There's a history. People struggle with thoughts of suicide and go through therapy to correct that.
So what you're identified as another community, the community of conversation.
Yeah.
Entering the conversation. This is the conversation. So if you're saying things that are incendiary, that are inappropriate, that's not serving the community, and you're potentially breaking it.
Yeah.
by using a word that hurts someone else because they may have a trigger based on that.
Yeah.
So that's a way that you can damage. So every community can be damaged. Every community can be damaged.
Yeah, I think you could say that every community could be damaged. However, could one person damage every community?
I believe that's true as well. Could one person damage every community, like a Mao in your country, or a Hitler? People know Hitler more commonly, or a Donald Trump, depending on which side of the coin you sit and believe.
Right.
So the community. So the first community is yourself. I'm just saying it'll expand to everything.
Okay, so you have your first community is yourself. What is your second community?
Second community, the first tier. So I say that's your point, or what the primary is yourself. The first tier beyond yourself is your relationship, your spouse.
Oh, your intimate relationship, your first intimate relationship.
Yeah, your first intimate relationship. So if it's not a spouse, it's something. You have some intimate relationship. Your sister.
Your partner. Your sister?
Your sister. Yeah. Depends on if that's your closest intimate relationship.
Okay.
What am I thinking of? Or your mother, or if you happen to be
like, say you don't have a spouse or a partner or any romantic relationship, but you are living with someone.
Right. And you're a daughter living with her mother. The daughter-mother is the primary intimate relationship.
Okay. And that would be different for every individual person. Every person out there would have a different second tier community.
Right. But it's the same intimacy. I think that was the right way to describe it. Is it's your first intimate relationship. It's an intimacy as opposed to a general.
Okay.
So it's an intimate relationship. And can you have more than one? I don't know that you can.
I've never experienced having more than one, but I mean, like, think about your kids. So I mean, like, if you have a nursing child, if you're a mother and you have a nursing child,
right,
is that more intimate than the relationship with your spouse?
Than the husband-wife relationship
at that time?
Because the nurturer, the primary caregiver for the first 2 or 3 or 8 years of life, depending on how long you breastfeed, that primary caregiver, you're 100% involved there.
Right.
All day long, as opposed to going off to work. I think that's a different relationship, though. I would still class that. How would you class those differently?
I mean, we've already established the first tier is yourself. The second tier is where it's the closest person or persons maybe to you that you could say would be responsible for the care of you, or you would be responsible for the care of them. Maybe it's split. Like, I could say my husband is my second tier. My husband is my second tier community because he is the next person in my life that would be responsible for my care. However, maybe the care that I give, I would be most responsible for my husband, but also my kids.
Well, and he's responsible for your kids' care as well. So I think it probably makes sense. What do they call that? The family, the
nuclear family.
The nuclear family is that tier 2. And that's people who you're responsible for or who are responsible for you. So you enter that as you need enough care. A child born needs enough care, or perhaps a grandparent would come back into that relationship, into that tier, if the family become the primary caregivers of that grandparent in their home.
Okay.
So that it's the home, it's the primary care location in that tier 2. Okay, so the important concept tier 2 is that you want to, in order to serve tier 2, you've got to be complete in tier 1. Your needs have to be met. If tier 1 isn't comfortable, It can't, if it's depressed, if it's hungover, if it's
dysfunctional,
or if it's dying, it can't serve tier 2.
Yeah, or its capacity to serve is hindered. It might be able to do a little bit, but it won't be able to full capacity serve.
To succeed. And I don't know if success is an outcome necessarily. You won't be able to get any positive outcomes.
Well, I mean, would you not be able to get any positive outcomes, or it'll just be less? I mean, I would say nobody on the planet in history or in future eternities would be able to operate at 100% health. There's always something you're working on to get better. I mean, we know that as we talked before, the horizon is receding. The goalpost is always moving away from you. And so there would be no way to 100% be healthy for yourself in order to serve your second tier perfectly.
So is it possible to disappoint in that second tier? You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be able to show up 100% all the time. So when you don't show up 100%, does that bother somebody else? Is it potentially bothersome?
Well, it potentially does, but that's the responsibility of the somebody else. If they have expectations of perfection, then that's on them, because the fact of the matter is there will never, ever, ever be perfection.
Expectations.
Yeah.
Are expectations good? I mean, is that what does an intimate relationship automatically have expectations?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say they do.
Okay, but then we have to take that concept back to the individual. So back to the tier 1, the base. Do you have expectations? Does a body have expectations of its owner?
Okay. So we're separating the body and the soul. What do you call it? The capsule that my intelligence is being carried in. Does my capsule have expectations of my intellect?
Right. Well, your body needs certain things. I mean, you need to feed it, right? The body needs nutrition, and nutrition only comes from a couple of different sources. You can intravenously feed it, or you can feed it by eating something and letting your digestive tract feed it.
I can't just think and make it be.
Yeah, you can't create food out of the air through your skin.
I mean, vitamin D from the sun, does that work?
Well, vitamin D, it might, but as I've studied about vitamin D, the sun gives you not enough.
Uh-huh.
Even if you're out in the sun all day long, you don't get enough from that.
Yeah.
Your body needs more than that. It needs something from internalized vitamin D as well.
But you get some, so that means that you can absorb nutrients through your skin.
Yeah, like photosynthesis. If we were plants, we'd get all of our energy from our skin, like plants.
And their roots.
The photosynthesis idea. But we're not in that realm. That community, a plant community, would work. Well, I mean, they still needs food from the roots, from the soil.
Right. You still have to add calcium and phosphorus and things like that.
There's a number of different ways that the individual community needs served and has expectation. And that's what causes the breakdown, is if it's not served appropriately, right? So if you don't give it what it needs, it will fall into disrepair or it will die.
Right.
So that's the same thing. You take that up to tier 2 with your family, your nuclear family. There are expectations a nuclear family has. Shelter, protection.
Perhaps you're synonymizing, you're equating the word expectations with the word needs.
Are those different? How are they different?
I think expectation might be it's a cognitive, conscious thing, it might be subconscious. It's something, I mean, it might be subconscious as well, but it's something that you decide in one way or another that you want, not necessarily that you need. Like I expect, I mean, I don't know if I can say this very well because it's like, you
haven't thought that. Keep thinking. You're going to get there.
I expect that like my coffee is going to be hot when I boil the water and add it to the carafe, but I don't need it to be hot.
But that's not really an expectation. That's a cause and effect. It's a cause and effect thing. That's automatic. There's no option to that. But you can expect that your dogs don't bark. As you said, the dogs were getting excited. You had to go downstairs, but it was cold. You expected it not to be cold.
I knew it was going to be cold.
Yeah, but you expected in the conversation when you scheduled this appointment or this time frame, when you said let's do this, you didn't expect that you'd be in a cold place.
That's true. I did not expect.
And you would also not want to be in a cold place.
Right.
So are those different? What's the difference of your expectation beforehand? Maybe expectation is a beforehand thing and a want is a now thing.
Well, and a need. Where does need comes in? There's necessities of life, right? What are the bare necessities of your second tier community? And is that different from, it's different from the wants, absolutely. And that's different from expectations.
Okay. Because you can lower your expectations and live a happier life.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. If you try to require too much of people, then they're going to be disappointing. And that's annoying. It's annoying if people disappoint what your expectations are or might be.
Yeah, expectations are preset. It's something, an idea. You imagine something will go one way, and that is your expectations. I'm expecting a package today. Whether it shows up or not today is a different thing.
And if it shows up, that's normal. If you got it yesterday, you're excited, I guess, if it shows up on time.
Exceeded expectations.
But then your expectation of the postal service, if it happens to become the postal service, you know that you're going to be okay whenever they get it there, that you're just happy they get it there. UPS, if they say that they're going to be there and they're not there, then you'll be more disappointed in the UPS.
You become concerned that perhaps they delivered it to the wrong house.
Right, because they're more reliable generally. That's that level of trust. You have a level of trust with certain services.
Yeah.
And you can trust this service is going to be there. If they say they're going to be there, they're going to be there at that time. Well, this person, if he says they're going to be there at a certain time and he's not there, then you start worrying what happened.
I was expecting him.
Yeah, I'm expecting him and I need him there and I want to do what we'd planned, but now I'm more upset. Other people, if you want something and you need it and you expect it and it doesn't happen, you say, well, that's kind of the way he is.
You begin to understand that person as unreliable.
Okay, and let's say that is the person that's in your primary intimate relationship, and that person is becoming unreliable and you're lacking trust.
Well, then my expectations of them have been changing too.
Right, but can you lower your expectations completely? If they go to zero, if your expectations go to zero, do you have an intimate relationship anymore?
No, I don't think.
Because intimacy is a joint thing. It's a give and take.
Yeah.
Or a serve and be served idea.
Right. If you can't have expectations for something that you don't know very well or at all. Like perhaps like the people that live up the street from me that I haven't met, I have no expectations for what kind of people they would be. Well, maybe I had a little bit expectations. I expect that they're not arsonists.
Right.
Because I haven't seen that kind of behavior yet.
And that they're not going to put their trash in your yard.
Right. And so I do have some level of expectation for them, even though I don't know them. Is there anyone I have no expectations for?
Yeah, you're identifying a further out community.
Yeah, is there any community even further away from me that I have zero expectations for?
The community that you're not a part of. There are communities out there.
Well, I am a part of the world community.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm a part of the universe community. If there's any other life out there.
We still expect Betelgeuse when it did explode 600,000 years ago, or 650 years ago is all it is. that it's not going to take us out as an Earth, which is possible. The gamma rays may hit us and we may lose our environment completely.
Yeah. So would you say that we all have expectations? It's impossible to have zero expectations for something.
I think that's probably accurate. It's not a possibility to have zero expectations.
Okay.
Primarily because you're part of every community.
Because you are alive.
Because you are. If there is an is, it's a community.
Yeah.
And it's part of the community. And it can affect the community as well. It has expectations and has the ability to meet or disappoint expectations or needs.
Right. So the closer your community is to you, then the more expectations there are, interpersonally, like interdependently, but within the community, there are more expectations. The further away from yourself that you go, the less expectations there are. Right.
So by having more expectations, does that bring a community closer? Is it the expectation? And I think we were talking about needs and expectations and wants. Those three things, I think they're all the same.
Oh, you do?
If you increase those, if you have a higher need for needs and expectations and wants, if those are higher, then your community is closer. You can identify your community based on how many expectations you have.
Is the expectations the cause of the closeness of your community, or is it a byproduct?
And my opinion on that is it's the cause. It's causal.
So I can just have more expectations for my neighbors, and then they will automatically become closer neighbors to me?
Yeah, your neighbors, but that's taking you outside. So let's stay with tier 2, the nuclear family.
Okay.
You can have more expectations of your kids, and they will be closer to you because you have more expectations.
Because I will become a helicopter parent?
Well, and that's seen as a bad thing, right? And if you do it wrong, it is helicopter parenting. You're just over their shoulder all the time saying you can do this, but still that relationship is closer because there's a helicopter above your head all the time.
Okay, and it's
more intimate. It's more, and maybe they hate you. Maybe it's not necessarily love. There's some contention with it.
All right. So it's spatially closer, but it's not emotionally closer. It wouldn't be emotionally closer.
It depends on if the child loves helicopters.
That is true.
If it's an Oedipal situation, and he loves it and she loves it, then that's fine. Oedipal. How do you say that?
Oedipal? I don't know that word.
Yeah, Oedipus. The helicopter mother.
Oh, A-E-A-E.
I don't know.
A-E-D-I-P. I'm singing it in my head.
So it's the helicopter parent and child. They could just, and that could be, I mentioned the daughter living with her mother. Maybe that's that type of relationship. Maybe the mother's the one responsible all the time and has just kept that daughter safe and secure and sheltered.
Dependent.
And the daughter's happy being dependent and sheltered by the mother. And so that's why they have that intimate relationship.
Yeah. So younger children absolutely love having their parents hover over them and be a part of their life, be a part of everything they're doing. But then as the kids get older, they like it less and they want more privacy. And
you also want them to do that. You want them to become independent.
Ideally, you do.
And then still have the connection of love. But if your expectation is they're not going to go and break things, you still, the more expectations you have, the closer that relationship is in love and respect as well. That's what I'm saying. So if they fully understand your expectations as a parent, and maybe you fully understand their expectations as a child, they expect these things from you, you expect these things from them, and there's a clear understanding.
We're adding the clear understanding part, the precision, right? Or making it known, making your expectations known. Because if you're holding expectations for somebody and they have no idea what those expectations are, then it's not going to be a emotionally close relationship. it will be a helicopter parenting kind of situation. But if it's clear what your expectations are, then it allows for those expectations to be met intentionally.
And that's the precision of speech. That's making sure that you're displaying who you really want to display, what's true and what's meaningful to your community. If you do that every time, then the community is going to be closer. If you never do that, if you never display what's true and meaningful to you, they're not going to know that about you. You're not going to know that about them. And you'll be living a parallel life. They're living their valuable, meaningful life, and you can live your valuable, meaningful life. But if you never communicate that, it's not going to be an intimate relationship where you both understand each other and you can join in excitements and joys and sorrows, challenges. You'll just be dealing with your own joys and sorrows and challenges without ever communicating.
Yeah. So what happens if the expectations are clearly communicated as far as you are thinking, like, I feel like I've communicated these expectations clearly. What if they're still not being met?
There's failure on the side of the expected.
Yeah.
Of the intimate relation. So the other relation is still failing that. What if they're not being met? Is that a problem? So is that what you're identifying? That could potentially be a problem, or is it necessarily a problem?
I suppose the correct question would be, is it necessarily a problem? But I believe that most people would say it absolutely is a problem. And somebody has to change. Somebody either has to meet the expectations or somebody has to lower their expectations for happiness to be present in this community.
And if in myself I've identified what I believe is true and what I believe is meaningful, and I'm displaying that to my partner, these are the meaningful, true things that I am expecting, and I'm putting this out. And if the partner does not provide that or doesn't agree that those are meaningful to them, then you say that's not a match. There's no intimate relationship here, so we're not going to continue dating.
Okay, but what if you're already married? What if you have 6 kids and you've been together for 25 years and expectations haven't been met so far, but you've just been holding on just in case or something? I don't know.
And you're hoping that things will change. And then finally you get in yourself and you say, this is what I believe is true, really. And I've thought about this for 25 years. And now in the last 6 months, I've really put it together. This is what I believe is true. And this is what I believe is meaningful. And my partner here must join with this. If we're going to succeed and go another 25 years or another 6 months, we're going to have to get on the same page with this understanding that I have now. And I'm relaying to him or her specifically and appropriately in precise speech.
Yeah. Yeah, what happens in that situation? And perhaps the other person doesn't meet that. They're like, this makes no sense at all. I prefer to spend all of my time boating. Just like we've been doing for the last 25 years. I want nothing to change.
I've got the 3 boats, and we've got 3 lakes we go to, and the fishing. I've got to fish every morning. I've got a boat and the water ski. My buddies, they need a water ski. And I've got to be out there. Sorry, we can't talk today. So you keep your meaning and your truth. That's fine. I appreciate that. But you keep it where it's been for the last 25 years in the house, and I'm going to go out. But that's what was being identified then. Is that why divorce happens? Because someone finally comes up with a reason, irreconcilable differences that would be an irreconcilable if the one person says, this is my lifestyle, this is what I believe is meaningful, and I'm just going to stick with that. And so you're coming up with something new. I don't want something new. I don't want to change. That's an irreconcilable, isn't it?
That would seem like that would be an irreconcilable if the boating and everything was more important than the relationship.
So intimate relationships, though, being two-way, the guy boating must have thought she enjoyed boating.
Yeah.
And said, you used to go out with me all the time. You're not going anymore. She says, well, I never really liked it. Didn't want to. I was going because I thought that we would get past that phase with you. And it appears you're not getting past that phase. So I can't do it. It's not fun for me, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So they could agree at that point that that part of their lives is independent and parallel, that they're just going to enjoy different things. And everyone has those too. Don't they have things they enjoy differently? In a valid, loving, caring, second tier relationship, intimate relationship, there are things that one person enjoys that the other person doesn't necessarily enjoy. There are some parallel items in that. What causes those intimate relationships to continue and not divorce?
This is reminding me of the Marriage Builders website group, Marriage Builders group in their website, and it's probably John Gottman as well. But in order for a relationship like a marriage to really work, you've got to have something that you do with your spouse that deposits into each other's bank, their love bank. That's a Marriage Builders thing.
Yeah, is that the love languages and things? You've got to understand the other person.
No, it's not a love language thing. It's a separate idea. It's, you get deposits and you get withdrawals, and so you have this love bank, and in order to build your marriage, you make deposits into your spouse's love bank. And if you can find something that both of you like to do that deposits into both of your accounts at the same time, then that's the most ideal activity for both of you to be doing together.
And that's what causes the relationship to have strength. That's the pillars that you're standing on, are those things that you do together. And if there are other things that are outside of that, they obviously exist.
Yeah, like something that your spouse likes. If your spouse likes boating, then every now and then you would go boating with them, and you're depositing into their love bank, but they're not depositing into yours. And so then every now and then they would do something that you like to do, and then you're getting love bank deposits, but they're not getting it because they're doing it for you. They're depositing, but they're not getting any deposits into their bank. And so if you can find something that both of you enjoy just as much as each other that can deposit into both of them, then that would be even better than just participating in their interests. So yeah, what if expectations aren't being met? What if love bank deposits just aren't happening both ways?
An intimate relationship it's got to be two ways. And let's say there's 3 kids and parents, all 5 of them must want to have the situation improve in order for it to improve. That's the progression. That's the receding perfection. You got to be attaining to a goal, attempting to become better at something or at everything at the relationship. So if someone decides to be as bad as they can be and break that relationship, can one child ruin a family? Or can one parent?
One child, one individual in that community, can they destroy that community?
One individual in a tier 2 intimate relationship, primary relationship, one individual break it by not providing needs and trying to break it. I think that's possible. Do we have any examples of that?
I mean, I can imagine that kind of, so like perhaps with sexual abuse situations within a family, one person might destroy the whole family in that way.
And even not completely destroy, but just based on a proclivity for some inappropriate behavior, there's an effect on the family that's continuous. So it's not that they went out to destroy it completely, but they're just a broken person and trying to fix something or trying to deal with life and are dealing with it incorrectly. So with that, they have an issue, and that creates an issue with the whole group, everyone.
Yes, and that issue is never going to go away. Once it enters, it will always be there.
It's there. It's a burr in the saddle, and it continue to be there. You can't get it out. You can take a burr out of a saddle, but for some reason you can't take. It's there. You try to take it out. You try to make it better, but the effect is already in place.
And it becomes a cancer, that like a non-malignant cancer that you can live with, but you're always managing.
Yeah. Or a pain, a small pain that's just always there. You got this glitch in my elbow, and that's just what it is. It's a glitch. We're not trying to break these relationships, though. We're trying to identify how to make it better. It's the Beauty and the Beast story. that we want to make better.
Yeah, even in the face of the cancer, how can you strengthen your community?
Yeah, you've got a cancerous beast there that everyone hates and everyone's afraid of, but the beauty comes in and sees that there's something in there that can be redeemed and redeems the whole situation.
Yeah.
And the beast becomes the prince that it's supposed to be, and he changes. So that's that expectation story, though. What if the beast doesn't change? Did the beauty waste her time, or does she then have to go on somewhere else? The story doesn't end that way, and it would be impossible to end that story any other way.
You think so? Like she can't just be killed?
She can't be killed by the beast?
The beast can't just kill her? Or she can't escape and then Gaston succeeds in killing the beast and freeing the whole community?
And then she marries Gaston and she just enjoys life?
Yeah, and these aren't possible conclusions to that story?
That's a good question. You could think that possibility, but it's not there. No, I don't think it is.
I mean, the story has been written, but I mean, you could imagine.
Well, it's been written. Let's consider that story is not just a story, that it's there because it's been written through seasons and different iterations, and it's an archetypical truth.
Okay.
Let's say it's a truth, and that's why it exists, and that's why it's classic. It's classic because it's a story that is true. So as a true story, an archetypical story, that's the only outcome. Yeah, like the tortoise and the hare. There's only one outcome to the tortoise and the hare. The hare never wins. There's no way. And in life, the hare will never win. So that's why that's an archetypical, a true story. So Beauty and the Beast, Tortoise and the Hare, they don't have any other endings. You can't make the rabbit win, no matter how hard you try.
Is that just because of who they are?
On the surface, it looks like just that's the way the author wrote it. And so that's just the way it is. And that's what you were saying first. It's because that's the way communities work. Love is, okay, and maybe it's an interesting, I don't know fully. I think once love is given out, it doesn't have to be received, but it is out. It's there. It doesn't disappear. Just like any damage a person does in a community is always there. Any love a person displays is always there as well. So any positive effect you put out, if you're putting out a positive effect, if beauty goes into the beast's home and puts out enough love and enough beauty, that's going to affect the beast. It has no other option but to affect the beast and cause him to look back to the flower.
You're saying enough.
Enough. Okay.
Is it dependent on a certain amount, or is it just any amount?
Well, it didn't happen overnight with Beauty and the Beast.
Just by the presence of the beauty, just being there.
And maybe it's consistency. Enough. Yeah, enough is, it's an interesting word because there's no definition that is that 7 grams or is it 10 years worth. I don't know what enough is, but it is something.
Is it guaranteed that there is an enough? Whatever it is, there's got to be an enough.
All right, that's the question. I believe that to be the case. It is guaranteed.
Okay.
And that's a hard statement to make because you can't prove it, but it is guaranteed because there's nothing you can do about it. After all you can do. Well, it's a scriptural statement. So after all you can do, everything you can do, it's still, you can't do it yourself.
It's still not enough, right?
It's not enough. It can't be enough on its own, but that invites the community, this subconsciousness, the third being the thing that we all share consciousnesses.
Uh-huh.
It invites that power from beyond to make that connection. I got to mention it in the fourth turning. I was just reading that recently. There's 4 phases.
What is the fourth turning?
4 phases of life. It's I don't know, Strauss and Howe. It's about the cycles of life, and that life is a cycle. It's not a linear, and they talk against it being a linear thing. I don't know. I can't describe all the four phases, but there are 4 phases. When you get to the end of the 4th phase, though, you can do all the work up to that time, but then you can't, in ancient tradition and in reality, you can't take the 4th turning and move it into a first. That's something that happens from the outside.
Okay.
That happens to you, for you. So that's the beast. So you go through all the 4 turnings. The 4th turn isn't going to happen until some outside force makes it happen. And that's ostensibly a God or a spiritual change, some effect from the outside. And I'm not sure how they describe that, but it's not something you can do. You can't engineer turning from the fourth back to the first. That's an open space.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. If you try to do it linearly, it always goes to decline. If you try to stay in control, you've got to give up control. And I think that's what causes the change of the beast is the control was given up. And maybe expectations. You can have expectations, but if you try to doggedly push expectations, you become a helicopter. There's no getting back. You have to step back and say, this is my expectations and this is my boundary, and good luck. And then the outside forces will come into play, and the child will no longer be a drug addict, perhaps. And perhaps it will just die a drug addict. And it didn't tear the family apart. It could tear the family apart if you tried to fully control it.
Is that an expectations thing? Trying to fully control it?
Try to make them do something. If you try to make the beast eat the beauty or something that just doesn't work, try to convince the drug addict, or keep them sheltered.
Oh yeah, like curfews and you're going to stay in your room until dinner, and then after dinner you go right back to your room. We're going to put a lock on your window and alert devices everywhere so that we hear on our phones every time a door opens, and this is the way we're going to control your behavior.
And if you do this one more time, the chain is there in the garage and I've got a lock.
We have even further control we can impose on you.
Right. And we'll bring you your food once a day and you'll be happy to eat it. But still, that person, a hunger strike could occur and this person could be happy not to eat it.
Yeah.
Just because they're completely controlled and have that doesn't allow them to grow.
Is that still, if that kind of control, if that kind of situation was happening, would that relationship with that community still be a second tier? Do you still have that type of closeness? That's that community service, expectations, responsibilities between the two people.
Control meaning
imprisoning them and controlling like all of their behaviors in order to that the idea is that you're doing that because you want to make them healthy. You want to prevent them from doing the harmful behaviors that are going to destroy the relationship. So if you place so many controls on it, is that relationship still an intimate relationship, or is it drawing apart during that time of detox? I suppose you've got to be doing other things in conjunction with this control. Family movie nights and things like that, maybe.
Use the word. Subjective. Everything's subjective. We have the term, but that's everything is subjective, and it all depends. Control, you can't absolutely control, so you're subjectively going to control. You're going to control what you can affect, but if it doesn't work, you have to be able to adjust. So you have to be able to learn. The truth you have, the meaning you have is never going to be held by someone else. You can communicate it as well as you can, as well as you need to be, but it's not going to be, they're not identical. They're subjective, subject to that other person's feelings and thoughts and history. So a person that's trying to control, trying to do the best for the family is also going to be able to break that family. So the person doing as worst as they can is going to be bad. That's the one side of the pendulum. As bad as I can be, the person that says, this is the truth, you're going to follow it, you're going to tyranny, is also a breaking idea. So the only optimum thing is to help me learn. Let's learn, let's change together. Let's change things. Let's see what didn't work in that. How did I offend you with that statement when I said suicide? So let's learn not to use those words.
Let's learn what the expectations are.
Yeah, for the community. Learn the expectations. You hear mine, I'm going to hear yours, and we're going to talk about, we're going to learn and change a little bit at a time so that we can continue the intimacy. And that's what intimacy is. Intimacy. You've heard that before?
No, I haven't heard that before.
Intimacy, you've got to be able to see the other person. And if you're willing to look, that's what the intimacy is. It's looking into the other person and seeing what they actually meant, what their feelings are and their needs, and then being able to change and work with those.
Okay. So how then what would you say is the best way to maintain the health of your second tier community?
Right, because we identified it's not to try to control it tyrannically, and it's not to try to break it maliciously. Love is how it's all based, right? It's all that conditioned love. You're going to put a condition. You're going to say, if you do this, I'm going to love you, but I'm going to love you anyway, even if you don't do that. But I would love it if you would do this.
I would love it even more if you
Yeah,
did this.
they'll say, well, I'd love to be loved, but I love this more than I love that. So I think it's a love thing. Depends on where you want to. You spend your time at what you love. And if you really love boating, you're going to spend your life boating. But if you really love your spouse or your family, and you say, I can let go of boating for 7 more years until the kids are out of the house, then I'll go back to it. So you determine what you actually love more.
And that determines what your community is then? Is that how you decide who is in your nuclear family, quote unquote? Because, perhaps, some people say, like, this is my family of choice, my best friends, and we get together like nearly every day, so that would be your nuclear family. That would be your second tier community if you spend much more time with them than you do with the people that you live with, maybe. So that second tier, we've already identified that second tier is the people that you care for next after yourself.
Right. And there may be others invited directly into that. I'm thinking of friends of children in your house get generally adopted as part of the family, part of that nuclear relationship. And they just become, and you love them just like you love your kids. And they're still part of, they're as much part of your family as the organic children.
Yeah.
And they know they're adopted, and you just work them in. Is it possible that an adult could do that too? That a friend, a neighbor could be that close? You're always talking, and it's appropriate. You have barbecues every Friday. You're just close.
So subjectively, that second tier is individual to the individual people, and that is who you serve and care for next after yourself. And does expectations are more for this group than for your communities that are further away from you?
Than for any other group. Yeah, and there are further communities away. So that one has the most expectations. You have lesser and lesser expectations the further you get away from that.
Yeah, that one has the most expectations, the most love.
Someone with 0 expectations is your furthest away tier of community. So your first community you're responsible for. Responsibility is important in there too. You've got the requirement to respond as well as the desire to respond to those expectations, to those needs. You're required to respond to yourself in the tier 1. In the tier 2 with your nuclear family, you're required to respond there as well. And that group, and it's not necessarily as much, you don't have to feed each body in there. It's not like a mother hen or a bird bringing back the food every day.
Not necessarily.
Except that is what breastfeeding is, right? Their whole sustenance comes from the mother.
Yeah, maybe when you're nursing a baby, they're pulled into your self circle, your self community for a time. They're still a part of you because when they're inside of you, that's you.
The first 9 months they're still there, so it's the next 9 months or a year or however long until they're on their own.
Until you actually detach and someone else can take care of them.
So you've got that primary relationship. They can take care of themselves to a degree and to an increasing degree. And that's where you're lessening control over them and letting them be more independent and more connected to these expectations and love, connected to the love scene as opposed to the requirement. So that tier, as soon as they graduate from the home, they get their jobs, they get everything else, then they move into a third tier.
Yeah, you're no longer directly responsible for their health in any way. In some way, still.
There's still a relationship, but it's not that nurturing primary expectations, needs, wants, desires. They're not that strong. They're less. They're a lessening desire and want and need. The person's going to go off and get their own apartment and work their job, and they're going to do what they do. And so you still may talk every day, but you're not going to have requirements every day of, what are you eating for dinner? We're having spaghetti. Come over, have spaghetti with us. You don't have to do that. You're not doing that all the time. The expectations are a lot less. So that's necessarily based on expectations, the causal relationship. Because you're lowering expectations, that shoves them out into a third tier.
Okay. Less expectations, less responsibility, same love, right?
Well, still love.
Still love.
Not the same love, though. It's not what is it?
Different love?
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't really talked about that. What's the idea of love? Unconditional and conditioned love. You're not putting as many conditions on it, so it's not as conditioned a love. That's maybe more unconditional love at that point.
Okay, the further away
You can put someone, the less conditions you're going to have on them. I'm going to love you more if you do this, or try to place a condition.
Yeah, that implies there's expectations. And
yeah, less expectations. You're going to let them be independent. When you let someone else be independent, you're not trying to have an intimate relationship with them anymore. So the intimacy is decreasing. And hopefully a husband and wife, the marital relationship isn't going to decrease in intimacy. But if it does, then that's what causes separation and causes moving away. But a child is automatically going to gain more independence and less dependence, less intimacy. And as that intimacy decreases, that's what necessitates a third tier. And your second tier is still the husband-wife sitting in the house, the empty nesters, then become the second tier that has to figure out, now what are we going to do? That's just us.
And then when your spouse passes away, then you feel empty, you feel lonely, and you need to find a way to have more people or creatures, I guess. You could get a dog. You fill that space. Would you say that it's reasonable to have nothing in your second tier? Or is that always something that needs to have some responsibility in it?
Yeah, do you have to have a second tier? An intimate relationship? Where humans built, the scripture identifies it's not good for man to be alone.
Yeah.
So that's our typical statement. So if it's probably not good.
Not healthy.
If that's an archetypical story, just like Beauty and the Beast and the tortoise and the hare, then it can't happen. It's not healthy. You'll die if you're alone. No man is an island. So you've got to have an intimate relationship, even if with a dog, a pet. And if not, a roommate or a best friend at the care center, or a nurse that talks to you all the time.
Yeah. And hasn't it been shown that people live longer if they have those kind of social relationships?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that specifically, but grandparents moving back in with kids, or, your elderly mother, that's a valid way. That's the way families do it. My family's always done that in my history, or what I understand. And in certain societies, it's always that way, that when an elderly person gets ailing, you don't put them in the nursing home. You bring them to your house and take care of whatever they need. And you become the caregiver and the intimate relationship. They become, again, part of your intimate nuclear family. And if they can wash dishes, you let them wash dishes, and then you rewash them because they can't see anymore.
That's part of caring for them. Let
Right.
them have responsibilities. I hope my kids do that for me.
And that's just part of the family planning. That's part of the estate plan. Is that the plan that you have, or do you want to create enough money so that you can put them in a home and keep living your independent life? Or you invite them back into your tier 2? I guess if you really understand this tier 2, you want them invited back into your tier 2. There's no
Right.
reason to not increase the love at that point when they get older.
Even if you have to hire, maybe you plan to have enough money to hire a nurse to come and take care of the parts that you don't like taking care of.
To be in your house with you and the old people and your kids. And maybe at that time, you're empty nesters anyway. They're not necessarily moving back into a family with kids.
Right.
They're moving back into a empty nest family of some grandparents that now have their elderly mother or father living with them. So the tier 2, does it have to be there? I think it does. It's necessary.
I think it does too. I think that makes sense. it's rational, that it'd be the healthiest. The healthiest version of the tier 2 would have someone in it.
The alive version. So healthiest. Otherwise, it's dead. Can you kill a tier 2? If tier 2 dies, then is tier 1? Tier 1 is probably at risk if you don't have a tier 2. So that's how they connect, is you've got to have a tier 2 for tier 1 really to be fulfilled, to be success, to be healthy. For tier 1 to be healthy, it needs a tier 2.
Okay. They're like interdependent.
Everything's connected. And we probably don't have time to go to tier 3.
Yeah.
Or 4. But tier 1 and tier 2, they're connected. They are necessary for each other. And before you can serve tier 2, you've got to be comfortable. You are confident and successful in tier 1. We've determined if tier 1 is broken, you can't really be an effective part of tier 2.
Right. You could be a part of it, but it wouldn't be effective.
The benefit of you
wouldn't be beneficial to your tier 2.
It's not progressing as quickly. So, what I'm thinking, the tier 1, again, the disabled person that's a tier 1, there's as much love, there's as much care there, but it's a person that needs care as opposed to the person that's giving it.
Yeah, they can give love.
Maybe everyone's just as happy. And that's what I've always said about disabled or, Down syndrome. There's more love in that home than any other home with a Down syndrome or a disabled individual.
Because there's less expectations.
Well, you've got appropriate expectations for the disabled person, but the disabled person has 100% expectations for the caregiver.
And the caregivers are meeting those.
And if they're meeting them, then that increases the love. If they meet them with love. And now I guess they could also chain that person to the wall so they wouldn't walk away. You can't abuse a disabled person. They can be abused as well. So it doesn't have to generate love. Goodness, then that goes against what I just said about the stories, the Beauty and the Beast. Do we know of situations where a disabled person hasn't generated love?
Well, there are plentiful documentaries on Netflix that you can see where that kind of thing has happened.
About what?
About people who are disabled in some way or another being taken advantage of or abused by someone else, by their caregivers.
Okay, so that does happen. So maybe my Pollyannish view of the stories isn't accurate. Malevolence is in the world, and there are people that do want to break that and eat the beauty. The beasts do want to eat the beauty.
All right. We're going to have to come back to this. This is important.
Right. We got to get to the next step. Yeah, that's tier 1 and 2. They're connected, and maybe there's a third part of it's a triangle, because you've got someone who's trying to break it, and that's malevolence. I guess maybe it is only 2. It's tyranny trying to ultra control it, or malevolence trying to ultra break it, and you can do that. So that is the documentaries you were talking about of abusing your primary relationships on purpose or making them do things that are not appropriate. So love is the main thing. Love and care and concern. The middle of the road, give and take, and working with an intimacy, seeing what's going on and making decisions appropriately with each other. And in order for that to work, I mean, that's what makes the tier 2 work. If the tier 2 isn't working, if there's no one to do that with, the tier 1 is going to have a problem with itself. Got to be able to share. Sharing and giving love is part of our being, part of our requirements.
It makes sense.
Probably as much as eating and nutrition, we have to be able to give love.
All right. Well, thank you for the conversation.
Have a nice day.
Okay, bye.